It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. I'm very excited for this interview today. Here with me, I have Maurice Philogene out of the Washington, D.C. area. Maurice, thank you so much for jumping on the show tonight.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Samuel.
Awesome. So to start off, could you just let us know who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff?
Yeah, man. Okay. So I appreciate coming on your platform. I listened to a couple episodes. Really important to get this content and information out to our folk as well as everybody else in the world. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. So again, my name is Maurice. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. area, born in New York, raised in Boston, came down to D.C. by way of University of Virginia. Relevant to your platform, I'm a real estate investor, have been since 2002, starting in single family, migrating into multifamily and large complexes in 2015, 2016. And then I'm an international real estate developer now. And then just overall general entrepreneur. And just like everybody else, I was trying to find a way to control my own destiny. So I consider myself an original entrepreneur-minded person, but someone who definitely stayed on the working path his whole life.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that opening. And so what I would love to hear more about is what your childhood was like, and specifically what you saw or maybe what you didn't see that ultimately shaped your view of building wealth.
That's a great question. I like the way you frame it. So I had a money blueprint for sure. Immigrant parents, work hard, go to school, get an education, go to work. That's just the nature of the way. We didn't have a lot of money, but I certainly wasn't poor by any means. And I'm very proud of what my parents did. My father was a 30-year educator in the Boston school system. My mama was a guidance counselor for 22 years. They both retired out of there. So I had the natural blueprint there. But what happened to me that put me on this kind of unique path, my folks had a French exchange student stay with me when I was 15. I went to his house the following summer, drove around the country for 30 days with his dad, and experienced life in a very different way than hanging out in inner city Boston. And I just knew that I wanted to see the world and be part of it in a different way, and knew I needed money to do that. So it wasn't that I saw a money thing when I grew up. Of course, I was watching the rap videos and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That the bling didn't get me. What got me was this trip that I took, and that set me on my journey because I wanted to do more of it.
Definitely. And I know we spoke a little bit off camera before the interview started. You mentioned this idea of freedom and just that everything you've done through real estate, through your investing endeavors has been centered around freedom. So before we even get into anything else, could you talk to us more about that and why that's always been the goal for you?
Yeah, so I have come to articulate it better over the past few years, but I operate off of certain freedom principles. Financial freedom is obviously one of them. And my definition of financial freedom is more passive income than you have expenses. As long as, if you have $2,000 worth of expenses and you can generate $4,000 worth of passive income, you're free. There's this misnomer that people need $2 million in the bank to be free. You don't, not at all. So financial freedom, time freedom, because time is the only real asset that we have. I only want to be spending my time on things that are valuable to me, not trading my time for money to the extent possible. So financial freedom, time freedom, geographic freedom, which is mobility, the ability to move around the world, be in different places. I've been to 100 countries over 250 times now. The last two are a little bit more innate. Freedom of purpose. I talked to you about being a police officer. It's my way of giving back to community. I don't need to do it for the money, but I want to be a positive part of my community. And then freedom of relationships, which is a sneaky one, Samuel. We should not engage in activities that keep us away from building new relationships with people. I'm not talking about networking. What I'm talking about is if you have a toxic relationship, romantic relationship, if you will, if you have a job that keeps you at a desk for 15 hours a day, and it's stopping me from meeting someone as spirited and entrepreneurial like you, I don't have the benefit of growing as a person by meeting you. You've got to have freedom of relationships to continue to expand who you are on this planet. And when we just stick in the same circle over and over and over again, we just don't grow. So I've operated off those principles.
Amazing. Amazing. So you also mentioned off camera we were speaking that you've been in the
Yep.
real estate game for about 20 years now. So can you talk to us about the beginning? Like what did that look like, just investing in real estate for the first time back then?
Yeah, and real estate has always been and will always be for me a facet of my life. It is not my life. I want to make that clear. It is just a very big tool that I use to live life extremely well, through passive income, and now more so legacy. And we can talk about that. But the way it all started for me was I bought a place when I was 22. I just getting out of college and was getting ready to start working for my agency, for my consulting firm. And it just happened to be at the beginning of the 2000 era real estate boom, from 2000 to 2006, 7 timeframe. It appreciated by 30 grand in about 3 months. I learned equity. I went to the library, right? We didn't have Google back then. I bought 10 properties in 1 year just by falling forward. I didn't really know what I was doing at 22. I just did it. And here's the concept that I was blessed with by a broker whose name I cannot remember, and she was 70s in that time, so I don't know if she's still with us. But she said, Maurice, instead of going out to DC and buying one big dodo egg, why don't you go ahead and buy 12 little dozen things, and you'll have more of them, and pay them off. She gave me that tip. So I started buying little condos, 100 grand, 80 grand, 120, go to work for my company, Accenture at the time. I was in the military at the time. Any paycheck I would get, any tax return, buy a property, then take my income plus the cash flow off the property, save it, buy another property, press repeat, until the point where I got up to 35 places. A bunch of them had high equity. I sold a few of them, kept paying places off, and ended up in 2014 with 18 places at 6 figures of passive income. That was the beginning of the journey and how I kind of won my financial freedom, but I didn't stop there necessarily.
Wow. Wow. So a couple of things there. You mentioned your first year, you kind of fell forward and ended up buying 10 properties. I know back then the real estate game was a lot different than it is now. So I guess could you just talk, I guess, about some of the contributing factors that allowed you to scale that quickly within year one?
Yeah. 2 things. Money was being printed by banks at the time. That was at a time of no doc loans, right? You could literally get a $400,000 loan stating that you made 100 grand at your job. You didn't have to prove it. You didn't have to provide W-2s. You didn't have to provide pay stubs. You could literally just state what you made. That was the first thing, which is why we got into a financial crisis in the first place in 2008, because most of the people who banks were giving loans to should have never gotten loans in the first place. Maybe including me in certain things, you know what I mean? So that was the first thing. And I guess the second thing was, at the time, because of the boom, I was fortunate enough to calculated risk, putting down payments on pre-construction condos in DC. So I would put, 25 grand on a condo in Arlington, Virginia, which is just outside DC and Georgetown. And by the time the condo was built a year and a half later, while my purchase price was $250, the condo would be worth $400. So I just sold it, took the revenue. I was smart. I didn't go out and buy cars. I didn't buy clothes. I didn't do anything. What I did was I took the cash, split it up. I paid off one property and then used the rest of the cash to put down payments on more properties. And I kept going.
Wow, I really like that. So that I've actually never heard of that concept before. We never had anybody discuss that. So basically, pre-construction condo, you put your down payment on, and by the time it's done, it's built so much in equity that you can just go ahead, sell it, take the cash and run.
Yep.
Wow.
It does still happen from time to time in different jurisdictions. You have to find it, but it does happen.
Got it. And I have a question about condos. I'm sure you've heard people say whole different kind of things about condos. Oh, I don't want to invest in condos because of whatever reason, the HOA or this, that, and the other. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on people who have doubts about condos? Have your thoughts changed about condos over the years?
No, no. I mean, I'm buying large 100 plus, 200 plus apartment complexes nowadays, but I mean, I still bought a $130,000 condo a year and a half ago in one of the same complexes I've been investing in since 2004 because
Wow.
I know it that well. Listen, this was my perspective about it. I didn't want to deal with the roof. I didn't want to deal with grass. I didn't want to deal with anything. And the way she explained, that realtor, the way she explained to me was like, look, just pay the condo fee. Somebody else does all that. Now, maybe I could make a little bit more cash flow because I don't have a $300 condo fee on a house that doesn't have an HOA, right? Who cares? It worked for me. It
Yeah.
works for me. It still works for me. I still own 18 of those condos. Many of the condo fees have gone up, but so have the rents at the same time. Um, but it's just it is a strategy just like any other. It works for people. It doesn't work for people. You pick something. I think the difference between me and others is that I just was unafraid to just pick something and go. So whether it was a condo or single family home didn't matter.
Got it. And there's one thing you mentioned that I really like. You weren't afraid to just go, pick something
No.
and go. And I think a lot of times, I'm sure you meet people who have these challenges. I meet people like this all the time. A lot of people, they just analyze, they study every single thing, which is good. You know, you should be informed, but they never actually take a step forward and try something. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Um, what would you say to somebody like that?
Well, I mean, they get the analysis paralysis and they quit. Look, it's the same. I, I have this phrase that I use. I do. I literally do and course correct as I go because we have a finite. I mean, we have 28,000 days on average to live on this planet. I'm not gonna overthink something. You know, most of it, just like a lot of people talk about, it's the journey. I mean, I'm happy to make mistakes. That means I'm giving it an effort. I mean, nowadays I can make more calculated investment choices because I'm in a better position. But for example, I've always wanted to live and invest overseas. Um, I freedom of relationships, right? I connected with someone who is now a great friend and my business partner. I don't know how to develop real estate anywhere. I'm not a real estate developer, but I'm now buying land on an island in the Mediterranean and we're developing it into, he's a developer, he's done it before and he's native to that particular island. We're developing it into apartments and villas. I know nothing. Like I am literally learning as I go and I am willing to figure it out, course correct, learn the laws. But if I don't jump at it now, as my man Steve Harvey says in his very famous video, if you don't jump, your wings are never going to open and you'll never soar the way you're supposed to, right? So for the people who just analysis paralysis, no, I'm going to lose money, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You should apply yourself as much as possible. And if you have the benefit of losing money, that means you at least gave something a shot.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Something else I want to ask you about. You mentioned that you took profits from selling properties to pay others off. Now, something else that I'm sure you hear a lot, we hear all the time. Some people are like, "Oh no, why would you pay it off early? Just
Yeah.
write out the full term of the mortgage." Like, what would you say? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so here, and I have spoken at a lot of real estate conferences, been on stages. I speak about it a lot on LinkedIn and what have you. Real estate or any investment, and let me just talk about me because everyone has different goals, but I'm just talking about in general. The purpose of the real estate thing is to generate income and equity such that you can live the best life you can possibly live and potentially leave legacy to your family or give back to community or what have you, okay? But you cannot, when people start taking something and saying, hey, I'm going to ride this out, I'm going to get the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. What they're forgetting to do is to solidify their ability to live on a day-to-day basis without having to trade their time for money. So my thought process was secure my life, give myself the ability to, no matter what happens, you see, I never sold the 18, right? I still have them, right? So when I finally end up leaving work, I never left work, and there's a reason behind it, but I wanted to secure my ability to just live. Now, the second piece is, well, you can now go get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I am getting bigger, but it's a consequence of helping people. I'm actually not trying to put my last name on an office building in DC. No, what I'm trying to do now is help other families generate passive income so they don't have to go to work, so they can build legacy for their families. And as a consequence, I'm acquiring more assets along the way, right? You see what I mean? Yeah. So I think that the distinction is people are just trying to get big for the sake of getting big. They're trying to get units for the sake of getting units. My perspective the entire time was to secure life, to live life extremely well, to connect with people and do good stuff in the world.
Definitely, definitely. Are a good number of those condos paid off at this point?
Just about all of them, yeah. There's one or two that's remaining. Those make sense not to touch at this point because I need cash to be able to do, let's say, earnest money deposits on very large deals that we're doing now, but they will eventually pay themselves off.
Got it. Got it. Makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because, somebody could have 8 units that are all leveraged, that all have mortgages on them. And you could you crunch the numbers obviously, but you could effectively get the same cash flow with 4 units, So yes. I think your point about growing just for growing is very interesting. I think it's important for people to, like, it's cool. Like, who would want to have a lot of units? But if you could have a good number of units that are paid off, you may not necessarily need to have as many headaches, as they call it. I think it's just important to look at it like different ways.
Yeah, Samuel. You know what? It's the same affliction we have in the corporate world. People go after titles, and not necessarily because they want that particular job or something, but because that is what society's telling them to do. You're the consultant, now you're the manager, now you need to be the senior vice president, then the vice president and the CEO. So then they will trade 80 hours a week to be able to go get that title. So what's happening in the real estate world, whether it's in the single family or the multifamily world, is people are doing things just for the sake of getting the numbers, instead of securing the day-to-day passive income required to have your family live your best life now. My God, if people would focus on getting $8,000 of passive income, let's say, for example, and they got $3,000 worth of bills, including a mortgage, let's even call it $5,000 worth of bills, and there's $3,000 left over. That family can now go experience life in ways that are worth millions and millions of dollars of memories that they can't do if they start competing with peers just to go after and get numbers. And that's the thing. Everyone's like, damn, Mo, you're getting really, really big, man. Are you going to hire employees? I'm like, no, I don't want any part of that. Actually, what I'm doing is virtualizing my business even more such that I can do good stuff for my family, for my kids, go travel around. We just came back from Mexico 2 weeks earlier. I was in Beirut, Lebanon. I think a week earlier than that, I was in Turkey. This stuff is supposed to allow us to live a certain way. We're getting caught up in, the baller status of it, is what I feel like.
I agree 100%.
Are you looking for a community of like-minded individuals and access to experts in real estate?
Yeah.
Are you interested in real estate but need more support and guidance?
You know who it is?
The Black Real Estate Dialogue presents the Real Estate Investing Community. No matter how much or how little real estate experience you have, we've created a community for you because your perspective is important. All right, tell me, where's the #1 place where you can do Q&A with experienced guest speakers 2 times per month? How about unlimited access to past guest speakers' recordings? What about a private Slack channel to engage in daily discussion with everybody in the community to share resources and support each other? Head on over to blackrealestatedialogue.com. That's blackrealestatedialogue.com. It's the real estate investing community presented by the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Come join us today.
I agree 100%. So something else we spoke about off camera Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you mentioned, of course, you got to the 10 condos in the first year. And I believe
Mhm.
you said by a certain point you had about six figures in passive income. Um,
Right.
at at what point did you reach that?
2014.
2014.
2014. So the next natural question is, why didn't I quit my job?
Yeah.
If like, why would you stay? Because I have goals. I mean, it all goes back to your goals. You remember I said my original goal was to make sure I had enough passive income to live well. So I if you get to that point, you start to that. You know what it is, Samuel? That's when I
Mhm.
realized that life is not about money, because I had the money, but money in and of itself does not fulfill you. It does not. It gets you to a point where you have the ability to do certain things, and I had that ability, but I had other goals, and those goals were related to, I come from an immigrant family. No one in my family has ever been a multi millionaire, or eight digits or nine digits, which is what I'm going after, and I know I'll get it before I'll leave this planet. So here's what I did. I kept the six figure high salary from my executive firm. I kept the 80,000 I was making from the police department. I'm also a restaurant owner. I kept revenue coming in from restaurants, and I used those funds to go after the next asset, the next asset, the next asset, not because I necessarily needed more passive income, because now I want the legacy. And now I want the ability to affect other humans, especially Black folk, because we don't do this for ourselves. We don't. Not because we don't want to, but because we were never taught. As much as I enjoyed social studies and fluid dynamics in school, that is not what I needed to be studying. I needed to be getting my financial education. You know what I mean? So keeping those employers was like putting lighter fluid on a fire. And I just now come to the decision that I'm going to leave my employers. Yet I could have left them, 9 years ago. But now I'm in a unique position where I can do some really, really big things on this planet, and that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome. Awesome. When do you plan to leave the job?
Probably late this summer, mid to late this summer. And you know what? It's not because I want. It's not because I don't enjoy it. Actually, both of the employees that I work for, the police department and on the executive side, I love serving my community on the police side. That is like, it's just an honor, because I came out of the military. I had to retire I retired after 22 as lieutenant colonel, but the police is my way of community service. On the consulting side, one of my client is a federal agency that manages parklands for family. Like, I love that stuff. The problem the problem I'm running into now is that my goals are now starting to shift. My goals are shifting towards, I want my family to have a Mediterranean lifestyle, like be by country, if you will. I
Mhm.
want to be a significant part of an international community. So if I can be a real estate developer in a country in the Mediterranean, like, there's no way anyone in my family could have ever conceived doing these things. And I need the time to go make those goals happen. And you can probably tell it's not about the money, it's that I want to have these experiences such that, when I punch off this planet on day 28,000 plus, I know that I've done everything that I wanted to do. I feel like I'm just ticking things off the list so much, man, and it's such a beautiful ride. Um, that's why I kept it. It just gives me more opportunity.
Definitely. And I really like that you mentioned that another debate that we see all the time. It's like fire your boss, fire your 9 to 5, but very
No,
seldomly do people talk about the benefit of having that stable income while you build up your other sources, especially if you're the first to do it. Most of us are the first
yeah,
to do anything like this. So what would you say to that?
yeah. I don't think you need to burn the boat. I mean, listen. In certain cases, some people need to just go focus. Like they say on Shark Tank, and make it happen. That's fine. There's a book by Adam Grant called The Originals. I started reading it while I was vacationing with my family last week. It is outstanding, and it talks about the fact that if this country, if it weren't for originals, okay, uh, we may have never had United States in the first place. There may have never been a civil war, right? There may have never been a Tesla because Elon Musk is an original, right? But originals can come in many different forms. And this notion that you need to burn the boats and get rid of your job small businesses or entrepreneurial businesses are 33% less likely to fail if the founder maintains a stable income. Okay. I understand the notion of burning the boats, but what I did really well was create time in a day. So we have 24 hours in a day. I'm one of those guys who gets up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I would work on the side hustle from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. If you do that 5 days a week, that's 20 hours a week. That's 80 hours a month. That's 960 hours a year. That's an extra 5 weeks a year to get work done. I was one of those guys. And if you add one more 4-hour session, you're talking about an extra month and a half. I created time on opposite sides of the employer while leveraging the employer's revenue to go build what is now a $100 million asset business. You know what I mean? But there was no need for me to take the risk of quitting. One, I liked it. Two, it facilitated my goals. And three, I had benefits from it. It wasn't impacting what I was doing. It was giving me skills that were very necessary for me being credible as a investment firm that I am now with Quatro Capital. So I get the burn the boat thing. I think it works for some, and then for others, stick with it because it's a great source of stability.
Definitely makes a lot of sense. So once you got to the point, I guess around 2014, where you
Sure.
hit the six-figure mark in passive income, how did things go from there? Did your strategy change at all? Did you get into different type of assets at that point? Talk to us more about
Yeah,
what happened.
yes. And so this goes back to the notion that life is not about money. It was not that I needed a different asset class to get involved in to get more money. It was that I wasn't growing as a person. I was pressing repeat on the same formula since 2002, and it was boring. Like I just wasn't growing. So I went to a seminar for a multifamily. Somehow it popped up. You know how we think our cell phones are listening to us or whatever?
They
It
are.
popped up in my Facebook feed or something. I went to a seminar. I walked in. Within 7 minutes, I walked out. I paid for the next class. It was a multifamily class. I took that in 2016. It took me 2 years to get over some limiting beliefs with the help of a mentor. And then I did my first multifamily deal as an investor. Then I did my first multifamily deal as a general partner, or I put the deal together. It happened to be a couple of mobile home parks. And then it has just skyrocketed from there. But because I wanted a challenge, the one other aspect I'll throw out to you is, for all the relative success that I had as a single family investor and relative success that I had at the beginning of my multifamily career, when I aligned with my current partners at Quatro Capital, and they asked me to sponsor them, and then we decided we would go farther, faster, better. We were better together. What I have accomplished with them in the last 12 months 100% eclipses, from a financial and asset perspective, what I did the previous 19. Right? So sometimes if you have the growth mentality and you partner with the right people, I leverage their skills, they leverage my skills. I am not the tip of the spear, go out and find the real estate anymore guy. I am the investor relations, help people break free from the 9-to-5, use real estate as an asset type of guy, and spend a lot of time with people on the phone helping, right? That's complementary to my partner, Chad, who is constantly wheeling and dealing and finding us properties that meet our criteria, to the extent where we have $42 million of property under contract right now.
Wow.
That we have to close in the next 2 months or so. So that's what happened. I wasn't challenged. I decided to challenge myself. This is where it's going. And then the next challenge is the overseas part. And I want to challenge myself. So I'm going to go do it.
Definitely. Love it. Love it. Couple follow-up questions. So you mentioned everything you've done with Quatro Capital in the last year has eclipsed everything you've done before. What kind of deals have y'all been doing? Is it like large apartments? Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we closed between January of 2020 and January of 2021, we closed 9 apartment complexes, anywhere from 20 units to 110 unit. We're slowly scaling. It doesn't mean that we couldn't have done a 100-unit complex as the first deal, but we had to get used to each other. We also had to set up our internal systems. How are we going to manage our investors? We're riding off of Google's infrastructure. We're totally virtual. You know, we had to do all those things to get scale. Now we have a 240 unit under contract. It's the same process. It's just we have to raise more funds, and I've made more relationships with people to be able to do that. But the amount of revenue we're generating, the level of assets that we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of assets. What I was doing on my own was a couple million, maybe like $5-6 million worth of real estate, because it was all condos. It's very successful in and of itself, but I now have the ability to impact communities. One of my complexes in Atlanta, we set aside a third of the complex just for homeless families and those affected by homelessness, to work with a program to get people into housing. I can do that now because I'm at scale. And now I'm thinking, like, what am I going to be doing in 5 years? Like, what community am I going to impact where I can, like, drive housing or drive education or something like that. Like, that excites me to the I get so excited about that, brother, because we just need people to be doing that type of stuff. So that's what I mean, that it's been so much more effective with partners, with Quatro Capital.
Definitely makes a whole lot of sense. And are these, I guess, everything that y'all have closed on in the last year, are these like all throughout the country, or is it like in a certain region?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we study markets. We have about 15 to 20 indicators that we look at, and we'll look at them once every quarter, because no market is the same. There is no national real estate market. Right now, we're heavily focused in Tennessee, Georgia, the Carolinas, Northern Alabama. From a legacy perspective, what Maurice was doing before Quatro, I'm in Maryland, Virginia, DC, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. But Quatro itself, I think we're in 8 states. And then the rest of us, my partners were doing real estate before we all got together. So we have stuff all over the place, but Quatro is very heavily in the Southeast.
Definitely. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And, you know, one thing you mentioned as well, which I think is really cool. And I think it speaks to what people who look like us can do once we are at scale, once we are working on these larger projects. We can help people in a major way. You just said you were able to set aside a third of a large apartment complex to help families in need, to help those who are homeless.
Yes, but I'll go beyond that, Samuel. This is how I want to help people. So if there's anybody listening, I'll just put some criteria out there, okay? If there's anybody listening who has closed on a commercial multifamily complex and they're interested in being sponsored to go after their next complex, they can get in touch with me. Find Samuel's show notes, find me on Instagram, find me on LinkedIn, reach out. What I want even more than me helping people get housing is I want to sponsor minority men and women to come into multifamily, for us to coach them on how to close multifamily, operate it the right way. And that will empower them to build their legacy, their assets, right? But I don't want to give no one a fish. I don't want to give anybody fish. I want to give people the ability to fish on their own. So Christy Keaton, one of my partners, we've sponsored her on her first deal. She closed it. It was 110 unit in Decatur, Georgia. We split the acquisition fee. So she walked away with a very large 6-figure check, and she deserved it. Christy is on her 3rd apartment complex in 3 months, because she has this system behind her where she can go get that done. She's a woman, I'm happy about that, but I need to see more minorities in this business. That's why I sought you out when Natasha reached out to you on my behalf, because I was like, man, I keep getting interviewed on podcasts, but I'm not getting into the community where I want to get into. So I told Natasha, who helps me on a couple projects, like, help me find some reputable platforms that cater to minorities, especially Black people, because we have got to get into this position where we empower ourselves financially. I know the rules of the rich now, maybe about 10% of it, and I'm using it. All of us should be using it, all of us. And if we don't seek it out, it's not going to happen. So I would love to help people.
Definitely, definitely. And then you also mentioned international development. Can you talk to us more about that and how you got into that and what the plans are on the international side?
It's growth, my brother. It's growth. It is personal growth. I know that the first deal that we're about to do, like that will net us in a 19 to 20 month period, well into the 7 figures net. And it all came from that trip that I told you when I was 15 and I was traveling around France. When I travel, I don't travel as a tourist. I mean, when I say I've been to 100 countries, I'm talking, it's really 96. But what I'm saying is I've spent at least 2 weeks in that country doing something meaningful, connecting with people, serving for the military. I ran a field office in Turkey as a federal agent for 8 months. These immersive experiences that I've had and these networks of people that I've had the benefit of bringing into my own network and being friends and family with, it's just phenomenal. So as much as I love DC, Boston, New York, where I've been, the world is a lot bigger than the East Coast. I don't want to just live in the East Coast. I'm gonna always be here. That's gonna happen. But I want to do something impactful, meaningful in a different country and prove to myself that I can. So what I did was seek out network until I found a common friend who told me that we graduated from college. I didn't know her. We graduated from college with someone. Her husband is from the Mediterranean, from Cyprus. We became great friends, and now he's giving me an opportunity to learn real estate development from him. So we're buying land, building apartments. I have my first project coming up, and then another one probably 6 months right behind it. And I'm stoked by it. I'll live in Cyprus for the month of May while I'm doing this stuff.
Nice. That's incredible. That's incredible. When you started investing in real estate, could you have envisioned you'd be where you are now or even involved in international real estate?
No, man. You're the first person who's asked me that. No, and it actually kind of makes me emotional. Look, I gave up my 20s, bro. I totally gave them up. Those 35 homes, it sounds all sexy until you realize that every weekend I was driving up to 300 miles because my properties were as far as 300 miles apart, painting, dealing with tenants, roaches, whatever. Like I was always doing something. I self-managed the 35 until I realized I could hire property managers.
Wow.
So when all the fellas was going out, and I still had fun, don't get me wrong, but I was like, I got 35 families to take care of. I gotta roll. So for the back half of my 20s and my early 30s, when I was depressed, doing all this stuff, it was horrible. That's what I'm saying. Life is not about money, but I was convicted enough to realize if I can just break through and get these passive income flows going, it will work. So there was like this 10 to 12 year period of just sheer hustle and work. And by the way, 2008 to 2012, I was working full-time for the consulting firm during the day, full-time for the police department at night, never told anybody. I would like sleep at lunch an hour in my car, get up, go back to work, come back home, sleep again, do it, all that stuff. It was just bananas. So no, when you say, could I have ever envisioned it? Hell no. No, but I had the conviction to, and I'm still kind of doing it. You could probably still tell that I'm like, I got to get after it. I got to get out because I want to succeed, but it has nothing to do with money. And that's the one more thing I want to say. If you have a purpose to all this stuff, if your purpose is just to go get the bling and get the cars and stack paper and stuff, you could probably do it, but you're going to fail at some point. There's got to be a greater reason, whether it's like securing your family, pulling up out of poverty, getting out of the 9-to-5, keeping legacy, or making like a legacy move. There's got to be something. And because I'm so convicted now about being the first person in my family to do X, and dying worth 9 figures because I want to leave half of that to some cause, I'm still willing to hustle. But no, I never ever would have thought I'd be where I am, and I don't know where I'm gonna be in 10 years, but I'm sure it'll be more than this.
Definitely. Definitely. So you mentioned a couple of times that you also work with the police department. So could you talk more about that as well? What your experience has been, what inspired you to do that, along with, you're already having a job as well, and of course, different business ventures?
It, I'm a man of service. Military said, or the Air Force said, there was too many officers coming out nationwide. You could go guard a reserve if you wanted, and I took it. Second lieutenants at the time was making 24,000. My company gave me 37 and a half. So I'm like, yeah, that's an easy decision right there. But I went into military police. So I was a military police commander for 4 years, typical law enforcement and base security, which is my introduction to law enforcement. But I got recruited into Air Force OSI, which is the equivalent of NCIS, the TV show, but on the Air Force side. So I'm a federal agent, just like anyone else. When I left, when I came back from my first deployment after 9/11, I loved the fact that I was impacting people's lives. I loved it. And I went back into the corporate world, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't want to be pushing paper while I could be out there saving somebody's life, or, stopping organized crime or something like that. And I just decided to join the local police department. It just so happened that the boss that I had at my consulting firm, when I told her that I was going to leave my 6-figure income, no joke, and go and make 40 grand as a police officer, she was like, "No, we're going to figure something out for you." And to this day, I thank her. She's now retired for 7-8 years now. I always check in on her. But I joined the police because I wanted to be part of the local community. I was good at law enforcement. I have kept it. It's very hard to give up when you're a man of service. And frankly, we need good role models out there on the street right now, and it's crappy. But that's how it's stuck. And I even now thinking about leaving it is kind of tearing me up, because I don't know how not to be in the street or to be out and about helping people. But at the same time, Sam, if I go out and make 50 million, do you know how I can impact that community in many different ways? So that's my kind of respite, that everything's going to be okay. But I have to get over this thing about, not being a federal agent or a police officer anymore. And it's hard to give up once you've been in the community.
Definitely understand. Definitely understand.
Yeah.
And then what other entrepreneurial ventures do you have going on? I know you mentioned a restaurant. Would love to hear more about that, and just other things you might have going on that we can know about.
Yeah, so I would love for people to check me out on Instagram at Maurice Philogene. There is a MauricePhilogene.com that's being built right now, so you can go reserve there. I was convinced by a bunch of people to start coaching on the freedom side, helping people escape the 9-to-5, the way that I did it. I've taught a bunch of people how to, for example, we have got to get into this habit of paying ourselves first. Forget about the bills. The bills will be there. Pay yourself first. Struggle to pay the bills with the next paycheck. You have got to get in the habit of taking a good portion of your check, and I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 60% of your check, putting it in a storage account, not savings, but storage, saving that money, storing that money until you have enough money to buy an asset. Go buy the asset, and then press repeat. If you give me anybody who's making any decent level of salary, and I mean, at least if you $40,000 or above, they can store money, buy assets, and be out of work within 10 years, retire from work within 10 years. It's just that we don't have the discipline. We don't. So I was convinced by people to start coaching on that, and coaching on those freedom principles: financial freedom, time freedom, geographic. I use a lot of tools to virtualize my life. I don't receive mail anywhere. Everything is virtualized. I can just see my mail online through a portal, and then I can have it forwarded to me or shredded as I see fit. So it's geographic, and then purpose and relationships, and help people design a life that we are intended to have on this planet, which is, we're supposed to be here to thrive, not just exist. So I'm spending a lot of time coaching people. I don't want to coach a ton, but I'll coach up to 10 at any given time. So if you're interested, if anyone's interested, reach out to me. I am an investor in a bunch of restaurants, but I am kind of backing out of that at the moment because I want to spend most of my time facilitating what we're doing with Quatro Capital. So for Quatro Capital, we help people invest their money. We give them opportunities to invest in multifamily apartments across the United States. We're doing mobile home. I've done mobile home communities, and we're also, believe it or not, doing a container community right now between a winery. So 2 wineries, and we'll put a container community right next to it, and it'll be Airbnb and all this stuff. So lots of projects, but my best 2 projects are the overseas one and then the coaching, because I'm really getting an opportunity to help people change their lives in a unique way.
Amazing. Whole lot for people to tap into. If people are interested in coaching and everything else, make sure, and you're serious, make sure to
Yeah,
hit
people
up
have to be committed.
Maurice.
If they're not committed, I won't work with them.
Definitely, definitely. Man, this has just been a really inspirational interview. I'm just thinking about the beginning. You mentioned that you had that trip when you were 15, and it
Yeah.
really kind of changed the game for you. And you mentioned it again as we got further into the story. But I think it's just great to see where you went in the beginning. Scaling to 10 doors. Your strategy with selling when you got equity, paying properties off. Um, I say the main thing for me as we go through is that every decision has been calculated. Even when you didn't really know what you're doing, you had an intention. And it seems like your life has kind of followed that pattern, um, along with service. So, I'm pumped up. I'm really excited for people to listen to this episode.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. And looking back on it, I think it was not necessarily calculated, but it certainly was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of being in the rat race. I don't like the idea of being told what to do unless it's my parents or my God. I don't like it. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like to work, as you know, or be of service. It just means I wanted to be in control of my time. And now that I have control of my time, I can impact community more. And that's what I've kind of always wanted. And bringing people not into the business, but helping people get the skills to create their own freedom for whatever it means for them. So, man, it's been a ride, and it's a blessing to do it.
Definitely. Any last words you'd like to leave with listeners? Any last tips or words of wisdom that you like to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what, man, I especially Black folk, we are not all folk, okay, but I'm harping on my own because we're taught to consume. We're not taught to build wealth. Now, I see a lot of the movement is better because we have people like you who are putting out content so people understand this stuff is here. But in general, we buy symbols of wealth. We don't go after wealth, which is problematic. So what I would say to people is, if you want just a basic formula, like go on my Instagram and go back to, like, I literally just did a 20 and 20 series where people ask questions, and I answered 20 questions in 20 days. You will get enough there to understand that all you have to do is take money from your paycheck, store it, find out what asset you're going to invest in, buy an asset, take the cash flow from your asset, add it to your job paycheck, create more money to go buy the next asset, and press repeat. All you have to do is that simple formula, right? In action steps, probably get a mentor or someone who's done it, and literally 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years, you'll have more choices than you could ever have going to the mall, buying a pair of jeans, buying 3 cars, putting it in your driveway, and all that type of stuff. So I'm challenging people to get after the wealth part of it. And if you want the other stuff, fine. Just buy the assets, then go buy the car.
Yep.
I mean, it's as simple as that for me.
Definitely appreciate you coming on. Definitely looking forward to playing this back, getting some game, and then putting this out for the world.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I found your platform.
For sure. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. If you'd like to support us as an official patron, go to patreon.com/Black Real Estate Dialogue. If you'd like to tap into our courses or any other resources we have, you can find us at blackrealestatedialogue.com. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from you all soon.